What's going on, guys? This is Ryan Liebel, assistant coach at Jacksonville University. First off, I'd like to thank Coach Shamati and the Richmond staff for putting on coaching through cancellation. This is a very tough time right now, but I will say it has given me an opportunity to learn from some of the great lacrosse minds throughout the country, and I hope to do the same. And hopefully, what I'm about to put forth and show, we'll do the same, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. Today we're going to be talking about defensive disruption. Within that, we want to talk about the importance of arriving with a poke, leading with a check, and scraping passing lanes. So this all has to do with long poles. It has to do with the unit itself, buying time for yourself and putting yourself at an advantage when you're approaching the ball, and then also buying time, saving time with everyone behind you to be able to put your team members, your defensive unit behind you in an advantageous situation to support you if and when you do get beat. So without further ado, here we go. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that brief introduction to what you'll be seeing today. As you saw in the previous video, hope you enjoyed the music in the background. It's a disruptive defensive package. So what that means is we're trying to put tremendous stress and ball pressure on the offense. And that goes into the categories that I have over here on the left. Offenses love time and space. They love being able to make multiple reads when they have the ball in their stick. They like it when a defense is packed in because they don't have pressure on the gloves, they're closer to the goal, and overall, they're going to be able to have a field day throwing the ball in the back of the net at a higher percentage. So conversely, defensively, what we want to do is take away that. We want to take away the time, take away the space, deter them from being able to see the field, see all those looks when they do have time, when they do have room, with their hands, with no ball pressure on their hands or anything along those lines. So our objective defensively is to take away that time and space, buy time for ourselves by utilizing our stick properly, and as we talked about, our teammates behind us to be able to read if and when we do get beat, how they can support. And then in addition to that, what we like to do is we like to talk about the shot clock. A lot of the times, there's a loose ball push or a ball goes off the pipe and the offense gets the ball back. So time is of the essence. And what we want to do is utilize the shot clock to a defensive advantage. So how can we steal time with early ball pressure and keep ourselves in a good position, in a good situation to be able to force the offense away from the paint? And that goes into our technique, our timing, and a strong IQ. And then with all of that, you obviously have to have athletes to be able to do it. So within that, the fundamentals are extremely important. Being in athletic stance, being in athletic posture, having your stick down and out, having two hands on your stick. And then there'll be a few other things that we'll be going over, how to use those tools within your toolbox, when to use them, and how to use them. To your right here, you'll notice the 5 yards outside the box on the top. That's really where we want to be picking up ball carriers with ball pressure. After that, if we're not getting ball pressure inside of the box, the offense is gaining confidence. They're spinning the ball. They're shrinking us as a unit because they have the ball and we have to react at the end of the day. and they're getting closer and closer to the red zone, the hot zone, or the paint, whatever you guys like to call it. But if they're getting inside of the paint with no ball pressure or too late of ball pressure, their chances of scoring go up, and ours of deterring that go down. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, what's really important to understand here is arriving with a poke, leaving with a check, and scraping are all situations that you will come across prior to your man having the ball. So what is really important to understand is when you're adjacent to the ball carrier, it's very important that you're anticipating where the ball will go based off of the offense's posture. Is his chest open to your man? Is he moving in your direction? And is he looking to throw the ball there? So if that's the case, you need to understand that you need to move with the ball. You need to shorten up that gap in between yourself, that landmark that you are or were at, and then you need to approach that offensive player who's going to be receiving the ball in a timely manner. Now, if you're doing that properly and you're forcing the offensive player who's going to be receiving that ball to have to take a step back or run towards the offensive player who's going to be throwing in the ball, you're already starting to anticipate where the offensive player is going. You're already in your head thinking, okay, I have to have a plan, a purpose, an understanding of what I'm going to be doing to dictate what I want to do with the ball carrier when he gets the ball. So if I'm doing all these things properly, what I'd like you guys to first look at is, as the on-ball defender, you're going to be arriving with a poke within a 6-foot range of your opponent. When he's receiving the ball, and if you're there at the right time, you should be arriving with a poke on his gloves, in between his top hand and his bottom hand, in that realm, because that's the highest percentage of where you're going to be able to get contact and deter the offensive player from catching the ball without any ball pressure. He may have to turn to the outside, which is always a good thing for us. If he's catching the ball and turning to the inside, it's almost an insult for the defense because you're not there either in time, especially early on in offense, in offensive possessions, or he's too quick and you're losing a step. And also, if he's splitting to the inside and you don't have your stick in that realm, in that area, below the sternum and above the belly button, then your stick isn't in the right position either. So if you're bent in an athletic stance, you have two hands on your stick, and you're arriving with a poke with those two hands on your stick, your bottom hand should be pushing the shaft through your top hand, and your accuracy point is, as we talked about, right below the sternum and right above the belly button for a higher percentage of a chance for you to be able to get contact when the offensive player catches that ball. Secondly, we'll be talking about leaving with a check. Now, this is important as well. Offensive players always have in some format, when they have that ball, they think their job is done when they're throwing the ball. So that's when you can catch them off guard by leaving with a check. If you're within that 6-foot radius, then why wouldn't you throw a poke on his gloves or on his bottom hand or on the shaft if your stick is in that area to deter him from being able to throw the ball with any ease? You're taking away his comfort level. You're forcing the offensive player to have to take 1 to 2 more steps outward to then throw the ball, which, as we talked about, we're buying more time for anybody else around us, adjacently behind us, to be able to read and react to the situation. And then the other point is, what if you do get a piece on the gloves and the ball does get deflected, or the trajectory of the ball coming out of his stick does change and there's a turnover, which you'll see happens a lot. Lastly, we're going to be talking about scraping. So scraping is, another word for that is just disrupting the passing lanes around your body and around the offensive player throwing that ball or receiving it. Just like in basketball, basketball players are always taught to keep their hands up. You're extending your body. You're getting the radius around you larger. So what is that doing for the offensive player? He has to work harder. He has to take more steps to be able to run around your stick or receive the ball. And again, you're buying time for everyone else around you and yourself and taking time off the clock, which is the most important piece here. And when you're scraping, you're not within that 6-foot radius anymore. You're outside of that because the offensive player is either running away from you or he's running to go and get the ball. So you have the opportunity, especially when you're outside of the paint in a non-dangerous area away from the cage, to be able to put one hand on your stick at that point to scrape that passing lane. But you must be prepared, and you have to have the potential. Understand that there could potentially be the potential for an offensive player to read that if you do it too early and either backdoor you to get the ball from his opponent, or he could potentially redodge you, and at that point, you're going to be putting yourself in a really difficult situation. All right, what you'll notice here is the defender closest to us with the knee brace on his right knee. He approaches the offensive player to our right squared up. His hips are squared. He's in good athletic stance. He's breaking down 2 to 3 yards before he gets to his opponent with the ball, and his stick is down and out. His chin and chest are up. He's arriving with a poke. His stick is in between the belly button and the sternum, and he's in a good position to be able to read and react whether or not that offensive player is going to be dodging. And if he is, he's in a good situation to be able to read and react, to be able to either have to retreat, move to his left or right, or he can throw that poke if the offensive player decides that he's going to be running away to throw the ball to his next man. If you're clogging, congesting the offensive player in that timely manner, as we talked about, as he's receiving the ball, you're taking away the ability for the offensive player to gain that confidence, and you're taking away the ability for that offensive player to think, have that time to think, and decipher what he wants to do to you. So that 6-foot pole is very important to be down and out, which gives you that cushion, that buffer zone to be able to read and react, to, again, buy time for yourself and everyone else behind you to be able to understand whether or not you're beat. And then secondly, what we'll notice here is afterwards, he will drop his stick up and in a passing lane. The head of his stick will be above his right shoulder line. The head of his stick will be above his head, and his left hand will be by his right pocket. So once the ball is thrown, we're reenacting that as if the ball is being thrown to the on-ball defender's right shoulder to the wing, and he wants to get his stick up and in to deter any skip passes that could potentially go through. So what we have here is the combination of arriving with a poke and leaving with a check. Just another drill that you could have, a different component that you could utilize for your practice, or if you have time in your backyard. Obviously, during this time frame, it's difficult to be doing this with other people. So what we want to do is start about 5 to 7 yards away. The offensive players in this picture are closest to the JU logo. The defenders are furthest away. They're 5 yards away. And what they'll be doing is they'll be arriving with a poke and anticipating that the ball is coming from their left, moving clockwise towards the JU logo, and then they will be continuing on their path, switching hands from their right hand to their left and acting as if they're throwing the ball to the next man. So what we want to do is anticipate that, time it up, arrive with a poke, and then as they're exchanging hands and they're bringing their arms up to then act as if they're throwing the ball to the next man, we are going to be leaving with a check on that bottom hand, or in between the bottom hand and the top hand on the shaft. So before we move on to see some positive clips here of us doing it properly, I'd like you guys to see the trajectory of where we started. So this was early on in the fall, and I call it skeleton defense because it's just that. The offense is able to catch and throw with no ball pressure on their gloves. They're able to catch and switch hands to the inside. No one's arriving with a poke. No one's leaving with a check. No one's scraping passing lanes. The defense is, after every pass, is getting more and more shrunk and tight, and the offense is able to gain confidence while throwing the ball around, shrink us, and then they're able to dodge. And the first point of contact for us is at the edge of the paint or inside the edge of the paint, and they're going to get looks all day if you're going against an opponent and you're allowing them to do this. That's where teams grow confidence. That's where they recognize where you're weak, and at the end of the day, this is where coaches are going to have a field day in the film room, as we did here after this practice. And then moving forward, you'll be able to see how we were able to utilize this film and change what we saw to force the offense to be further away when we're picking up the ball, using our athleticism, using our IQ, and using our fundamentals and our posture, and those tools that we've been talking about to get on the gloves and force offensive players to be on their heels rather than on their toes. All right, so what we have here is the technique of arriving with a poke. We're in 6 foot range. The offensive player is receiving the ball, and we're going to be in his gloves as he's catching the ball to be able to deter him from continuously coming towards the cage. If we're forcing him away from the cage, if we're forcing him on his heels, if he has to run and roll away from pressure, then we are winning the battle. What you'll notice here, right, as we get there, he's running sideline to sideline. We're able to arrive with a poke. And what's really important here to see is obviously we didn't slide. We're coming back. Our stick is down and out. And when the offensive player receives the ball in a really good spot on the field, what we're doing is we're breaking down before we get there. Our stick arrives first on the gloves. And end all be all, the offensive player, rather than continuously going north-south, he has to run away from the cage because he recognizes that the on-ball defender has recovered. He's deterred the offensive player from getting a look. And if he stays where he is, then he's going to be in a difficult situation to be able to make a play because we're on his gloves. So we've bought time for ourselves and we bought time for our opponents. Here, what you'll recognize is all we were doing here. We had an advantage defensively because someone ran off the field. The offensive player came to the middle. We had our stick down and out, and we were over the poke on the gloves, and the trajectory of the ball changed. That's all we're asking for. Here as well, we were over the poke when we had to slide. Our stick was down and out first. We got on the gloves, and the trajectory of the ball changed. Here as well. Again, right on the gloves. What's really important to notice here is this was a step down shot, a very difficult situation to be in, especially when you're off ball. But what we saw is the on ball defender, or sorry, the skip pass, when we ran out there, we were making sure that our body was deterring the head of the offensive player's stick to take away that lane to the cage. And yet, an offensive player is going to think twice about that, buying us more time. But also, when we do arrive with a poke and we do get a piece on the gloves, I can promise you the trajectory of that ball changes just by a hair. And luckily, that ball hit our goalie in the head. But at the end of the day, if we can get a piece on the glove or the shaft, that's all it takes sometimes to be able to change the angle or take a couple miles off the shot. See a few more clips here of utilizing our length, arriving with a poke, and then we will take the body. But if you arrive with a poke and run past the offensive player, or you don't break down prior to, an offensive player will recognize that you're running full speed, and the really good players are going to be able to read and react and run right by you, which happens a lot in the fall, especially with our younger guys. But it's really important to drill that continuously by breaking down 2 to 3 yards prior to, by splashing your feet, reading and reacting, and making sure that your stick is the first point of contact and then the body if you have that opportunity and that he still has the ball. All right, so now that the offensive player has the ball on his stick and we recognize that we're in a good situation by forcing that offensive player away from the cage, we're playing fundamental defense, we're not giving him an inch, he recognizes that he doesn't want the ball anymore. What we're doing now, if we are within that 6 foot range, we want to leave with a check to get a piece on the gloves to change that trajectory at all. And then if not, we're still forcing that offensive player away from the cage. and we're still letting him know that we are there and there's not going to be an easy pass. As you can see, the offensive players are running far away from the cage. Right there was a turnover. Here, it doesn't always have to be a hard check. Just being on those gloves can deter any offensive player from throwing a good pass if he doesn't get out with his feet properly. All right, so now we're going to be talking about the scraping technique. You'll be doing this in non-dangerous areas on the field. You can't be putting one hand on your stick inside the paint, inside of where the offense is attacking. When the offense is not attacking, when they're throwing the ball around the horn and they're trying to get rid of the ball and they're outside of the paint, outside of the range of where they can score, then it's okay to put that one hand on your stick, but you still have to have your head on a swivel and you still have to make sure that you're in a good athletic stance to be able to read and react if your man could have potentially backdoored you or if he decides to redodge. What you'll see here is if you scrape a passing lane and that offensive player has had to change the direction of where the ball is going, or if he has to take 2 to 3 steps out and switch hands, you've done your job. You've taken 2 to 3 seconds off the shot clock. He still has the ball in his stick. You're buying time for yourself. You're eliminating time off the shot clock, as we talked about. And you're also allowing the defenders behind you to be able to take a breather and read and react and get organized if they're not. See here, sticks in passing lanes, as we always want to be. Our guys started to get good at this at the end of the year. Timing is everything, and posture is everything. All right, so putting all these pieces together, what I'd like you to do is count and see how many seconds we're able to take off the clock with ball pressure and with that, as we talked about, that adjacent defender recognizing and anticipating that the ball is going towards their man. Right here, we're able to take about 15 seconds off the clock before that ball is thrown. If we're doing this together as a unit and they're all on the same page, you're scraping passing lanes, you're arriving with a poke, you're leaving with a check, you're stretching the offense. If you're able to do this with all 6 guys on the same page, and it's really, really, really crucial that that adjacent defender to your left and your right recognizes where the ball's going with a constant head on your swivel, you're going to be in a good spot late in a game, but you got to have the legs to do it. And it takes time, it takes patience, but I will say that this has definitely paid off in the long run for our guys. They've bought into this, and you know, again, that time frame is so crucial for us with shot clocks and loose ball pushes and balls hitting pipes and all that stuff. So if we can continuously ball pressure and if we can have that adjacent support to be able to push and force that offensive player further away from the cage if he's catching that ball on his heels rather than on his toes and he's attacking, we're going to be in a good spot. All right, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate, again, the Richmond men's lacrosse staff for allowing the Jacksonville University men's lacrosse staff to be a part of this. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out. My contact information is below. And I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy and well, and hope to hear from you guys soon. Take care.